In business, it was very different because it forced me to think outside the box. In clinical, there's always an evidence-based solution for a treatment. There's always something you can reference, always something you can look back to. In business, it taught me, you can get there like many different ways to get this, different answer that can all work. That was a very big mindset shift that helped me into what I'm doing right now. Took me quite some time to shift. But, if someone is listening to this podcast and is like a clinical provider, I wish I heard this, like someone else say that before I spent 9 months trying to figure it out on my own.
Hey there, and thanks for listening to the Beyond These Clinic Walls podcast. I'm your host, Julia, a PT turned product professional, joined by my delightful partner in crime co-hosts, Emma.
This is my tribe. This is how I think.
And Emily.
That is the best getting into PT story I've ever heard.
Founders of the Clinician Transition. Each episode, we interview former rehab professionals who have leveraged their clinical skills into non-traditional roles. I invite you to come hear the journeys, follow the career paths, and learn about the opportunities beyond these clinic walls. On today's episode of Beyond These Clinic Walls, we are joined by Casey, a brilliant and just all-around awesome human being. Casey's roots are as a physical therapist, but motivated by the opportunity to make a positive impact on the healthcare industry, Casey pursued an MBA and transferred his skills into work as a consultant. Here, Casey consulted several Fortune 500 life science companies, assisting them with managing over $2 billion worth of assets, launch new products, and enhance their patient access and commercial strategies. He also contributed to the business development, client relationship management, and team mentoring. Casey shares all about these experiences and how they set them up for his success as a market access strategy client success manager on today's episode. And if you're loving what Casey has to say, make sure to follow up for his show and tell, because along with the Beyond These Clinic Walls podcast, Casey will be hosting an Ask Me Anything session about his career transition. Be sure to follow him and Beyond These Clinic Walls on LinkedIn to sign up for the event. And always, happy listening. Casey, welcome to Beyond These Clinic Walls. We're so excited to have you here.
I am pumped to be here. I have been a huge fan for a long time.
Yay! So the first question I ask all of our guests is to do like a very high level, just give us the bullet points of your career journey. So like where you started in rehab sciences to where you are now and what you do. High level, because we're going to dive in.
Yep, super high level. So I went to school at the University of Vermont, where my undergraduate and graduate degree. Yes, Jules and I have the same alma mater. After that, I went to start working in Boston at a few hospitals. I went to Mount Auburn Hospital first, and then I went back to business school. And then after business school, I went to a consulting company. After that, I went to another consulting company, and now I'm where I'm at right now. And I love it.
I would like to know, because you had a few roles in PT too. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you first started to transition? What kind of started wheels turning for you to see what else was out there?
Yeah. So the biggest turning point for me was I was very big on impact. So I think as a physical therapist, what we do in our job is very impactful. However, we can only positively affect the lives of like maybe 50 to 60 patients a week. So I wanted to make like a higher impact. So my goal was always actually to move out of clinical to go to like hospital administration so I can make more of an impact that way.
So your initial goal then wasn't to end up consulting. It was more.
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not. I had no idea what consulting was. If you asked me right after I graduated, I would say my goal is to be the chief operating officer of Partners Healthcare in Boston.
Yeah. So what made that switch then? What happened? How did that happen?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I was in my last semester of business school and, still working full time at a hospital in Boston. It was my last semester and I said, oh man, like I really don't want to do hospital administration, anymore, because I found that it was super bureaucratic. In the sense that before you can become a CEO, it's like 25 plus years, which like makes sense, it's a lot of work, but it's like the trajectory to the CEO is not linear in the sense where it's like you could be, a manager for like 15 years of a clinic before you can, get to, it's like very top heavy at
Sure.
those, institutions, and people just don't leave. So you're in like one role for a very long time before you can make any real impact.
Kind of
So I
sounds
was
like
like,
physical therapy. Yeah.
oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started.
I want to rewind a little bit to your initial intent and drive to go back to business school. So I think a lot of our listeners like play with the idea of, should I go back for a different degree? Should I get a certification here? Or should I just try and get into a role to get experience? What was some of the things that you were thinking about at that time, and why was business school the direction you took?
Looking back, I wanted to do business school because I wanted to build credibility for myself. It was a very unorthodox route to become a CEO from a physical therapist. They're usually MDs, PAs, nurses, never really physical therapists. So I thought to myself, I have to make sure that I build credibility. Otherwise, no one's going to take me seriously, because although I might have the skills, it's just might be a little bit too unknown for some people. So I went back to business school for the credibility. In hindsight, definitely did not need to go back to business school in order to do what I'm doing now. It helps, builds credibility. The clients listen to me when I say something, but I'm not learning how to do my job much better because of it. I learned everything from, yes, I got some transferable skills in terms of, how to do like accounting and like banking, finance. I know all that stuff, but that's not helping me with my role currently.
Yeah. Was there anything that you did take from school that you do apply today in your role that you couldn't have learned through experience? Felt like that was an equation.
I feel like I don't want to say no, because it's certainly not true. I definitely did.
Yeah.
But
do you think it opened doors for you? Like, because you said it gave you credibility. So
big time.
Yeah.
Opened so many doors. There's no way I would have been able to get my initial consulting role without that. And knowing someone as well.
Yeah.
So
initially when I was looking through a lot of the roles too, even for like a junior consultant role or associate consultant role, but they were requiring, or it was looking for final year students of an MBA program. So even then it was almost like a prereq, and it's hard to not bypass that, especially like you said, getting your foot into the door for the first time.
Yeah, I'll take a step back. It definitely opened up a lot of doors for me, but it also gave me a much better understanding of business. As a clinical provider, all is clinical. However, in business, it was very different because it forced me to think outside the box. In clinical, there's always an evidence-based solution for a treatment. There's always something you can reference, always something you can look back to. In business, it taught me, you can get there like many different ways to get this, different answer that can all work. That was a very big mindset shift that helped me into what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Do you have any like real life examples of that? Not to put you in the hot seat, but that's such a good point. And I think it's like, a lot of the soft skills carry over from the clinic, but then this being comfortable and making sense in ambiguity is like a huge skill that I feel like you're really good at, especially that you've taken from consultant. That, and like having confidence, that's something too that you're very good at. That you're like, Jules, you got to have confidence. I'm like, I'm working on it, Casey.
100%. Just dive straight in. So yes, definitely I have an example. So when I first started off in consulting, obviously super excited. The first assignment I got from my team was, Casey, build out this target product profile for this prospective drug that's coming out to the market. I'm like, okay, great. I can do that. Can I have some instructions? Like, no, figure it out.
Yeah.
So just to make one slide, I maybe spent no joke, maybe 4+ hours trying to figure it out. And then the partner of the firm comes back to me and was like, Casey, what'd you do? I'm like, this is all I got. She goes, this is certainly not good enough. And then that's when we got into a conversation when it comes to failing fast. But before then, it was okay, I had to research everything and I had to make sure I was right
Mm.
before I was comfortable,
Ooh, yeah.
doing anything else. It was hard. It was a very hard
Yeah.
transition to make.
Let's dive into that a little more because I
Yeah.
think that's something all of us have experienced. That's totally a common theme of us being subject matter experts in something, knowing how to get an answer, and then knowing what, like just floating in space and hoping for the best. Like, what was some of that feedback that senior partner gave you, like with the fail fast? Can you tell us more?
Yeah, so in terms of the failing fast, it's like don't spend so much time, so much more of your energy to trying to figure out what the answer is because as a physical therapist, like depending on which setting you're in, like someone's like livelihoods are in your hands in terms of
Yeah.
their treatment. Like they're depending very heavily on you to get back to their, like basic standard of living. If you were in like I was in cardiology in Boston, it's like making sure that the patient's like BP doesn't drop too much or else like they'll be in
Hmm.
trouble. So it's
Yeah.
like you had to be right. And they were
Right.
definitely wrong answers. And with wrong answers, like people could get very hurt. So
Sure.
it's just that mindset didn't shift for me. So
Yeah.
it took a very long time and just the overall feeling fast.
Hmm.
My partner, like what I got from it is that ambiguity is okay. It's a team effort. So what you do is fail fast. You see a problem, come up with a solution that makes the most sense. Spend 20 minutes doing that. Go back to the partner. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. This is how I want to go about it. What do you think? That took me quite some time to like shift.
Yeah.
But if someone is listening to this podcast and is like a clinical provider, I wish I heard this, like someone else say that before I
Hmm.
spent like, 9 months trying to figure it out on my own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just curious about your perspective pre MBA and post MBA from the perspective, making a sweeping generalization. I apologize if you're listening and you don't fall into this, but most therapists are not business savvy. We go into this to help people, not to make money. And I know Emily and I run into that in our
Yeah.
jobs every day. And I feel pretty confident that one of the main difficulties in our profession is this lack of understanding and even a resentment of the business side of healthcare. However, it is a reality that we need to live with. So, do you feel like going to MBA school helped you understand that and not assuming you resented it, but can you imagine how other people might resent it less if they were to just kind of understand the business side of it a little bit more?
So business school on top of, my experience in consulting, because my consulting is like in life sciences and pharmaceuticals, I learned a lot more and it made me much better, much happier with my decision to leave. So it's like, this is kind of embarrassing, but when I was in like the physical therapist in Boston, I was like so ambitious. I was telling everyone, we need to do this. We need to have more PT so we can get patients out of the ICUs, like point 0.4 ICU days accounts to like $55,000. Like I was doing all this stuff, and but I was getting very frustrated with the actual system. But then in business school, I learned that revenue is price times volume. Okay, so you can't change the price of PT because it's paid by insurance. So there's a set price for insurance unless you don't take insurance as a PT, and then the other thing to increase your revenue as a PT is volume. So you can see more patients if you want to make more money. And that's not really something that I wanted to really do. So that helped me understand that, it's not necessarily my fault per se that I like in terms of like that perspective, but understanding from a business side after business school, I certainly understood why.
That is really good. And I like
Yeah.
that question too, Emma, because I think it's easy for us to only see one side of things. I think also, Casey, I want to know about kind of your larger experience. So you had the business side of things, but in rehab science, I think we're so siloed. Seeing business from a healthcare standpoint, that probably opened your eyes to just a lot more different areas like life sciences. Can you
Mm-hmm.
elaborate a little bit more on that? If that was something that you were exposed to, how did you decide that you wanted to stay within healthcare, within consulting? Did you want to go elsewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be honest, like the pivot, it felt easier for me to pivot knowing that I wasn't just giving up absolutely everything that I learned.
Mm.
So, for example, it was really difficult for me to even think about possibly after business school going into like banking finance, and investment banking, which I did think about doing, but I feel like I really didn't want to like start over. So the reason why I chose pharmaceuticals is because we have a lot of patient experience. So, I mean, it's a lot more on the downstream side in terms of like after the drug is already launched and the patient has access to the therapies, like that's what we have experience in, like patient engagement. You would be so surprised. Like I've been in consulting for a few years now. There are some people that just don't know how to talk to people. It's like if you're consulting, trying to talk to a client and people say, "Oh, Casey, you're so good at it." Well, because I had to deal with patients. If you can engage with a patient, like you're absolute money. There's just so many transferable skills. So like I'll take a step back, but I did not want to leave healthcare, just out of fear. However, after being in the life sciences space for a little bit, that fear was definitely unfounded.
Yeah.
I definitely could have gone into investment banking or that kind of stuff, but I still like the idea of helping out patients, having as much impact as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm going to pull you back in because you started talking about transferable skills.
Yeah,
and I
I'm
think
sorry.
that's always something people love. I
Yeah.
think Leanna asked the question is like, what have you taken from clinical that you use daily in your current role?
My biggest one is relationship management.
Ooh, tell us
That
more.
was the biggest one. So, and it's overall collaboration and teamwork. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I worked in the acute care setting. So it was a lot of collaboration. I needed to communicate with the nurses in order to understand what I needed. Then after I treated the patient, I had to communicate with the cardiologist or the orthopedic surgeon. And then after that, I had to talk to the case manager. So there was a lot of communication and collaboration between different disciplines. So that's definitely something I use today, constantly. Another part is relationship management. So a lot of I don't want to get too deep into it now, but we have to deal with a lot of very sensitive situations as providers, so like whenever, a patient comes talking to you about like much deeper stuff or like life at home is much harder, but like they don't, qualify to go to rehab. I've seen that so many times. It's being able to manage those emotions and those relationships with patients definitely helped me a lot when it comes to like being calm in a very intense setting.
Yeah. One of the things, so you were one of the first people I reached out to when I was transitioning. And I remember something you're really good at is like negotiation tactics. And like, I think the principles of that are so applicable in relationship management because it's like finding something that both I want one thing, you want something else, both of us are like, where does that overlap? And you're really good at that. Is there anything in that negotiation tactic that you can talk about? Because I remember you gave me like a mini lecture on that. And I was like, that was really eye-opening.
I did. So one of the consulting firms, so I've only been in two consulting firms. One of them specialized mainly in pricing, market access strategy, like very concrete data numbers. The other one is a lot more a little bit softer. And the other one I was in focused on negotiation strategy. And, Jules, I told you, but it was amazing. Those skills, I take them all now. So the biggest thing that I want everyone to understand is when it comes to like negotiating, the two biggest things I want us to understand is when you're negotiating with someone, like what are like their interests? It's like, so for the example that I like to use is, okay, there is a parent and they have two kids, right? And they have one orange.
You're gonna be like, they have one favorite.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny. So both kids want the orange, but they're fighting over it. And then the parent comes over and goes, okay, and then asks them the question, what is, obviously in a much, kid-friendly way, what is your interest? Or like, why do you want the orange? The one, kid wants the orange because they want to eat it. The other kid wants the orange because one of the recipes that they're making calls for like an orange zest. So because you're able to understand what the interests are, you can create more options. You're like, okay, so technically we can both have this orange. So like I'll peel the orange and then give you the core to eat, and then give the other child like the skin so they can zest it. So these negotiation strategy, a very good book that I like to read is it's called Getting to Yes. Very, very good negotiation strategy book. I highly recommend it.
Emma, do you have anything to like throw towards negotiation? I think that's something I'm always a little afraid of, especially when it comes to, I think for all the ways that make people fidgety in healthcare with money and sales and understanding your worth.
That could be its own separate
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But a resource and someone that's really interesting is Josh Braun, who's one of my favorite salespeople. And he bases his work off of Chris Voss, who wrote Never Split the Difference. And
Hmm.
he used to do hostage negotiations for the CIA. And then
Oh, cool.
Josh Braun sucked out all of that stuff and applied it to sales. But there
Oh.
are a lot of techniques. Mirroring is a very popular one. So you'll say something, I had a really nice time this weekend doing surfing. And instead of saying, oh, that's cool, I surf, it's surfing, question mark, as if to say, tell me more. And so I
Oh,
would say the real
yeah.
thing is just getting them talking and not making assumptions versus
Mhm.
I always tell people to brush their teeth and not have commission breath.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's almost like nearing a little bit of like motivational interviewing tactics too.
I'm a big fan of that.
And from a sales standpoint, I don't want to take this over, but we don't really negotiate. Like this is the
Mm.
price, and if we've done a good job and delivered the value, then you think you're getting a deal. So there's really not a
Ooh,
lot of negotiation because then you're teaching
yeah.
people the only way to buy your product is with a discount.
Well, Julia, look at me and my pre-biased on what salespeople do. That's good to know. I like it.
Well, I have the best sales team in the world, so I don't know what everyone else does.
And Emma is the best sales leader in the world.
No, no. I think if you put in an effort and you're honest, you have integrity and you're not lying, you're not pressuring people, that makes a good sales team so much. By the way, everyone listening is a salesperson. If you're a physical therapist, I'm sorry, but you are a salesperson, whether you want to admit it or not. You're just selling different things.
I know you talk about this a lot, Emma, that, like you just said, PTs are salespeople, rehab therapists, salespeople. I would also throw in there that we probably negotiate in everyday life more than we even think we do.
Mhm.
Even if you're not in a negotiation, I bet we just do it and don't even realize it.
Yeah, every night when you put your kids to bed.
Every night. Brooks could give a class on negotiation.
Yeah.
I got my base negotiation skills from my consulting job, but sharpened them at home against my wife for sure.
Okay, I want to know, what is consulting, Casey?
So to me, consulting is when a company reaches out to a consulting firm to help them answer questions that, one, they either don't have the capacity to answer themselves, or two, want a soundboard to help them answer that question. So that's when you would hire a consulting firm.
And what drew you to that?
Honestly, it was really by accident. I was at a holiday party at my friend's house, and she knew I was in business school, and she asked what I was doing afterwards, and she goes, "Do you have any jobs lined up?" I'm like, "Not yet." And she's like, "How about you apply to my consulting firm?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do my research." However, like in my mind, I told myself, like, I'm not gonna go to this other consulting firm. I'm gonna go to, like, McKinsey, Bain, BCG,
Yeah.
like one of those three firms. That's where I'm going, because I thought to myself, oh, MBA, I'm like, hot stuff. That's not how it works. It's very, 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 very pedigree heavy, those places, but which is fine. However, like this role kind of, like, fell into, it was just, so the firm that I worked at fell into my lap. I wanted consulting because it would allow me to do everything and get good at everything very quickly.
Yeah, and it's like versatile. You can apply it
Big time.
everywhere, I feel like.
100%.
Yeah.
And there's so many different subjects that you can learn, and it's like, yes, you're in life sciences or pharmaceuticals, but you get one consulting project on, like preclinical, like before they even like put this like medication in patients, or life cycle management. I'm like, okay, there's a generic coming onto the market. Like, how do we strategize to maintain market share? So you see like the entire gambit of issues, and it's great. You learn so much, and there's so much ability to like grow quickly and move around.
Yeah. Who are good people that thrive in a consulting environment?
This sounds so generic, but like self-starters,
Yeah.
and that sounds so stupid. I'm so sorry, but
no, that's fine. But elaborate
yeah,
on it. So, like, what do you mean by a self-starter?
it's like someone that doesn't wait around for like an answer to a question. Someone that's independent, that has entrepreneurial thought, someone that is willing to move in ambiguity. It takes a really versatile person to want to do consulting. However, even like for someone that's like listening to this and like, oh well, I'm not any of those things. You can certainly still thrive as a consultant. You just have like a different type of role.
It sounds like there's a variety of skills that you can apply to any sector of consulting that you're doing. Is there any other skills or like qualifications, refinement that someone interested in getting into it should really make sure they're honing in on?
Yeah, definitely would need to have like investigational skills. So be able to ask the right questions, ask the client the right questions. Another thing that's going to be very helpful is it's assumed that you already have the skill because we're dealing with patients and people all the time, but like either public speaking or just like engagement, Something else can be very helpful is conflict management. So if a client, is like not happy or is, outwardly upset, like how are you going to handle it? And another thing is going to be storytelling. I feel like this is absurd when I say this for consulting, but if you know how to tell a story, it's you essentially like taking all the problems. Okay, this is a problem that you had. This was the route that we took to answer these questions. This is the summary of the questions, and this is how it can help you solve the problem. So if you can, take very complex concepts and relay it in a very easy to understand way, that's a very important skill to learn.
Yeah, those are all gold for anyone listening.
Yeah.
See how you can apply those from your current role to demonstrate those skills.
So for people in my role too, the conflict management and some of the other stuff that you said, I thought of those myself also, but the storytelling is a good add-on. I hadn't necessarily thought of it in that capacity. And I think more of storytelling in my brain as like you are telling a story or giving an example. But the way you said it, it's more like you're breaking it down in a very, like in an arc, kind of like a story. But it doesn't have to have a character in it or something, or does it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Emily, thank you very much for making that very clear. Yes, that was like it, in my mind, it was very clear, but I guess, for a lot of listeners, that might not be.
It.
So yeah. It's like, certainly it's just like seeing the problem, breaking it down and relaying it back to someone in a less complex way. Like say that very well.
Yeah. As Emily, you were saying that, I think another part, knowing your audience and knowing like the level of knowledge you're able to communicate with them, because some people need 101 level, some people need like the 501 of like getting much more in depth of that story. So are you giving them a children's book or are you giving them the Iliad, and like knowing your audience of who's going to be receptive of that information that you're giving them. That's something I've learned too, which has been helpful. That's good.
So a lot of people reach out to me, like a lot of PTs or surfing LinkedIn, and they'll reach out to me and say, hey, like I'm thinking about like leaving PT. I'm curious if we can have a conversation. So when this happened to me a few years ago, I would always help. I'd always help. It was like, obviously, because I'd been there, I want you to have, I want that person to be able to leave, to be able to go into a role that would fits them a lot better, that appreciates them, that maybe, be honest, like pays them a lot more. So I would like almost like kill myself to like constantly like help these people. But then what I found is like I would start to exhaust myself because they would just message me on the whim because they're a little burnt out one day and then they don't really want to leave. They're like, I'm not really sure. So when Jules eventually slid in my DMs.
Yeah, I was just looking at my LinkedIn to see if I could find it. I don't think I have our history on here.
Before I have the history, I'll pull it up.
You have
Let's
mine?
see. Of course I do.
Oh
Let's
my
see.
God, no.
Yeah. Let's pull this up.
Oh my gosh, you have it? I was just looking through my LinkedIn and I don't have it.
Jules,
Oh wait, this is so
you tricking
funny.
me?
Wait, what? I feel like this is like an
On my
episode of
phone,
like,
Gina,
you are
so-
not the father. This is
Oh
like
my gosh. Did you just get lucky? Let me see. You got so lucky. Yes. We had a very
But
long
I want to
history.
know like
We do.
the cliff notes though.
Yeah,
what was
I
the
feel
vibe?
like
Oh yeah,
yeah,
of course.
okay. I'll let Casey say it first and then I'll give my
So very high level, Jules reached out to me and it was like hi, we went to the same school. I'm thinking about leaving PT. I'd like to have a conversation. Before I even responded, because I was sick of these. I'm not gonna lie. So before I even responded, I looked at what she was doing. I'm like, okay, this person wants to leave. What efforts are they making to make themselves, more valuable, like outside of PT? I think Jules had some like accounting certificates or something like that, or like something business oriented that made me feel like she was making the effort to actually leave. I'm like, okay, this person wants to leave. So then, boom, I'm like, okay, I'm putting all my eggs in Jules, like a UVM alum doing the work, wants to leave. Hell yes. I think that was 2 years ago.
That what? It was 2020.
Oh my
It was
God.
almost 3 years. Yeah.
Almost 3 years ago. Lord have mercy.
I know.
So I think what I was like getting at in the story is like you have to want to leave. You have to want to do it. You have to want to like push yourself forward and be uncomfortable. Being a physical therapist is very, very comfortable because you are a subject matter expert. You know a lot more than anyone else does about the human body. So although it might suck, it's easy to go into work and do your job. It's not as easy to take that step outside of clinical, push yourself forward, and get a job that you might be uncomfortable with in the very beginning because you just don't know.
Most likely going to be uncomfortable.
Yes, almost definitely. But if you can get comfortable with uncomfortable, then you're all set. That was my biggest thing.
No, that was good. Casey, I told her, remember when I like first reached out to you, because then you were very good and you were like, hey, what have you been doing to like reach out? And I was like so nervous, but like at that part, I was like kind of getting my footing with stuff, I remember. So I had some stuff to be like, I'm working on my clinical informatics certificate and now I'm doing my research here and trying to do this. And then I remember that first call with you when with like consulting, you're like, you were very good at it, but I was so nervous. And I remember you got on the phone and you're like, with your consulting voice, just being like very on top. I was like, but you were awesome.
I got it.
Oh my God, no! Are you done?
Hi, Kleckner. I just wanted to reach out and connect. I saw you were a UVM DPT alum too. I've been working as a PT in outpatient setting for the past 4 years, but I'm looking to transition into a non-clinical role. Currently, I'm interviewing with insert firm here, a position in healthcare consulting at the associate level. I saw your career trajectory looked very similar to what I wanted, so I wanted to introduce myself. I would love to pick your brain at some point in the future if you have time. Otherwise, hope you are staying safe, testing negative, and staying positive. Julia.
Some comedy at the end.
That's a good ending.
Good ending.
Yes.
Oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. Okay, that was good.
Yeah, and I'm just like reading our conversation, and oh man, I'm so serious.
You're so serious.
Yeah,
I was like, maybe I shouldn't have done that joke. Wait, that's so funny.
What a square. Jeez. I'm like, honestly, probably because I was like so frustrated with having to do this all the time. But you were absolute money. So
my watch just told me you seem a little stressed. Do you need to do a breathing exercise?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Hey, that wasn't that bad.
No,
area of improvement now, knowing my tips from Lauren Sheehan, whose episode was on April 28th. Go back and watch it because this episode will be released after that. To make that even better, I could have said, here's a few times in the next week. Give a few options. So that would be easier for follow-up with the time zone. But hey, that wasn't too bad. I really thought that was going to be a lot worse. How did you find that?
I had to do a little bit of digging, but overall, yeah, I thought that was great. That was just fine.
Thank you. That was good.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me it's rare when someone slides into my DMs, as they say. But when they say, hey, I'm interviewing here, for some reason that makes me feel so much more comfortable as the person they're messaging, because it's like, oh, they're not just like going to get on and ask me for a job or something, or just like directly asking me for so I noticed that. I think that's a good thing to put in there.
Thank you.
I'm also comfortable with, like recommending someone for a job, like if like, which I've done for Jules on both my previous jobs, like wherever Jules wanted to go. So like wherever I was going, Jules was going, because we had a conversation and I was comfortable with her skills, so like they can ask for a job all they want, but after this conversation, if I think you're going to embarrass me, I'm not gonna do it. However, always reach out. Like other PTs are always willing to support, if you're willing to do the work. So.
Casey, any questions that you get asked really frequently that you want to take this time and platform now to like answer?
My biggest question I get is like, what do you think I should do? It's like, oh my God. So I'm very, I'm going to push that the question over onto you guys. Like when someone, I'm sure it happens to you all the time. Like if a clinical person is trying to move out of clinical and they go up to you, is like, I see your role, I've seen other roles, but I'm not really sure like what I want to do. I know what I say to them, but I'm curious, like, what do you say?
I'm trying to think. It's funny. I don't think that question is asked directly to me, hardly ever, but kind of indirectly, I can kind of parse out, oh, they're still kind of early in their journey. I give them a lot of resources to look into client success, because there's tons out there that are for free. And if they really are interested in customer success, client success, and they go do those and they come back to me and they're like, I did this webinar, I did this whatever, I love this, I have an additional, then I'm like, okay, they're really interested, they're putting in the effort.
At this point in time, I'm taking a bit of a step back from the one-on-ones. My big goal and I'm kind of speaking on your behalf, but our goal is to scale ourselves with essentially no resources. So we have created the TCT Notion page. If you haven't heard of it, we will be happy to share it with you, and Slack. My personal strategy is to try to get people to use that. It's essentially a Wikipedia. And then if that doesn't answer the question, then I will jump on at the soonest opportunity I can to chat with you. But my request is to go through the Notion, because it is a lot of questions we find ourselves asking or answering frequently.
I feel like for mine, it's usually a little bit more indirect too. And I think that's because product is a little bit more maybe vague in what it is. So unless someone has really done their research and knows that they want to go into product and comes prepared, I don't get that question too much, but I have gotten it a few times of like, oh, I'm just looking, early stage, blah, 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 don't know what to do. I usually just turn it back on them and say, well, what have you done and looked into? And see where they take it from there, because then that gives me some insight. And usually at that point, then I think they usually get a little hang of it. But Casey, what do you do?
It changed. So it was over 3 phases. Okay, the first time I would do exactly what Emily did: send them a ton of resources, all this kind of stuff. Like, oh, you should look at this forum, this job description, blah 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 blah. The next phase did what you did. Or what you do. It's like in the sense where I turn the question back on them, like, okay, like let's problem solve through this together. Like, what are your interests? Like what do you like doing? All this stuff. Now, what I do now, I send them straight to you guys. I send them straight to like
listening to the podcast.
Like listen to the podcast. You can all clinical providers all have the same questions as you. Like see what their roadmap was and see if it works for you. If not, great. If it does, awesome. So literally, hey, Dr. Charles, blah, 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 blah. Nope, here, beyond these clinical walls. There you go.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Honestly, like I've listened to your podcasts and it's gold. Like you talk about these, like we've all had the same question, like leaving, like, should I do this? And like, what can I do? and how do I do it? Like those three questions is what we all ask ourselves. And your podcast answers that question for everyone in multiple different roles.
Yay!
So that's why I feel like you guys are definitely doing God's work. That is for sure. And
Thanks,
you're making
Casey.
my life a lot easier because now I just send everyone over to you guys.
Yay! I love it.
Yeah.
Emma, were you going to say something? And if not, you can wrap it up too.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you for the kind words, and a quick clarification. I'm going to speak for you again, Emily, and probably all of us on this call. We are not career coaches. So if you ask us a question of what should I do, that's outside my scope. But to Casey's point,
it's outside my scope of practice.
we have resources. We have a jumping off point, but we've never marketed ourselves and don't intend to be. Thank you so much, Casey, for joining us and for being such an advocate for this movement and for our Beyond These Clinic Walls podcast. Thanks again for being here. You've given us so much on this call. Is there anything us on the call or the people listening can do for you in return?
No, this was great. I think you guys are doing very, very big things. Even though there's been quite a big movement of clinical providers, I feel like for every one that does leave, there are 12 that want to, but just don't have like the courage to. So, you have the resources, you have the support. It's way easier now than it ever used to be. So do it.
Thanks to everyone for listening to this episode of the Beyond These Clinic Walls podcast. As always, be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Beyond These Clinic Walls for all the latest updates and episode releases. Make sure to join the Clinician Transition group on LinkedIn and Slack to be part of the networking community for like-minded rehab professionals. Questions, comments, concerns, or do you know someone who might make an excellent guest on our next show? Reach out to us at beyondtheseclinicwalls@gmail.com. And as always, thanks so much for listening.